Hi guys, it's Miss Edwards. Today video lesson 1.3 is going to talk about properties of numbers. There's actually 5 of them that you need to be aware of. The commutative property of addition. There's also the commutative property of multiplication. And then you have the associative property of addition and the associative property of multiplication. And the distributive property, I know you guys already know because I just spent 2 hours grading your pre-assessments, and a lot of you used distribution to solve those equations that were on the second page. So I'm pretty sure you've seen this before. The commutative property just simply says that when you are adding 2 numbers, such as a plus b, well, that's exactly the same as doing b plus a. If the order changes, the sum does not change. The associative property addition's a bit different. If you look on the left side, you have a plus b plus c. On the right side, you also have a plus b plus c. So the order didn't change at all. The order is a, b, c, with plus signs in between. However, on the left side, look what's in parentheses. It's the a plus b over here that's in parentheses, so PEMDAS tells us to do that first. However, on the right side, the parentheses switch. They're now around b plus c, so you would do b plus c first and then add a. So the associative property addition, of course, is going to be a sum, but what happens is the order of the letters or numbers doesn't change, the parentheses move, and different sums are regrouped. The commutative property of multiplication is very similar to the commutative property of addition. It's just you're multiplying instead of adding. A times b is the same as b times a. 5 times 4 is 20. 4 times 5 is 20. And the associative property of multiplication, again, is just like the associative property for addition, except you're multiplying. On the left side, you would do a times b first, and then multiply by c. On the right side, you would do b times c first and then multiply by a. You'd get the same product as a result. It's just the parentheses moved. They regrouped 2 different letters. And the distributive property tells us that when we have a number times a sum, or, by the way, it could be a number times a difference. There could be a minus in the parentheses. To get rid of those parentheses and make them go away, you just multiply this number on the outside by the 2 terms on the inside. A times b gives you ab, a times c gives you ac. So remember, the commutative property, whether it's addition or multiplication, has to do with changing the order of the numbers. The associative property of multiplication or addition has to do with regrouping, the parentheses move. And the distributive property, remember to multiply across the parentheses, meaning you have to multiply by both numbers in the parentheses. A lot of you did not do that when you used distribution on your pre-assessment. You multiplied beautifully by the first term and then kept the second term the same. Make sure you multiply by both. Now, in order to make our life a little easier, for the purpose of these notes, I'm going to be nice and let you use abbreviations, but that doesn't mean you don't have to know how to spell commutative property of addition, associative property for addition. But today we're going to use some abbreviations. We'll use CPA for commutative property of addition. We'll use APA for associative property of addition. We'll use CPM for commutative property of multiplication. We'll use APM for associative property of multiplication, and then we'll just simply use DP to represent the distributive property. So let's take a look at what's happening in these examples and see if we can determine which property is being used. In the first one, you've got a number times a sum, and on the right side, you've got a times b, and you're adding a times c. So you can see that what happened is we multiplied the a through the parentheses and hit both terms. That's the distributive property. Now, when you have problems like this, let's take a look at order. On the left side, y, z, x is the order of the variables. On the right side, however, it's z, y, x. The order has changed, so you should be thinking commutative property. Just because it has parentheses doesn't necessarily mean it's the associative property, because here you have y plus z in the parentheses, and here you have y plus z in parentheses. So actually nothing The parentheses didn't regroup anything. What happened was y plus z became z plus y. It's the commutative property of addition, because y plus z switched order and it became z plus y. In number 3, a times b became b times a. That's the commutative property of multiplication. Now in number 4, I hope you can see that there has been some regrouping that took place. On the left side, a and b are grouped together in parentheses, and b and a are grouped together in parentheses. However, on the right side of this equation, the only thing grouped together in parentheses is bb. So clearly the parentheses have moved around a different set of variables on the right side. So we know that that is the associative property, and it's of multiplication because you don't see any plus signs in there, so you're multiplying. Now this next one may look confusing, but what you want to do is distribute on the left side and see if you end up with what's on the right side here. So if we do x times x, we get x squared. If we do x times a, we get plus xa. Then we do plus b times x is bx. And b times a is ba. And guess what? That's exactly what you see on the right side. So sure enough, you use the distributive property for that one too. Now the next one, you see parentheses. You may think, you know what, I'm going to distribute on the left side and see if I get what I got on the right side. X times 1 is just 1x. X times b is plus xb. A times 1 is just 1a. A times b is ab. Doesn't really look the same as it does on the right. So let's distribute on the right and see what we get. X times 1 gives you the x. X times b gives you the xb. And then distributing this a through a times 1 gives you the a. And a times b gives you the ab. So this one is distributive property, but to see that the two sides were equal, you had to distribute on both sides. Now in the next one, you're multiplying. On the left side, you have 7, then 2, then 3. And on the right side, you have 7, then 2, then 3. So the order has not changed, but look what happened. On the left side, 2 times 3 is in the parentheses. On the right side, 7 times 2 is in the parentheses. So this is the associative property, and since you're multiplying, it is of multiplication. The parentheses moved and regrouped around two different sets of numbers. In number 8, a plus b equals b plus a. You're probably filling that in already without me telling you. The order changed around addition, so it's commutative property of addition. The next one, you got to take a look at this. The order is 2x, 2x, 2x on the left side. And forget about the parentheses that are there. The order is still 2x, 2x, 2x. So the order didn't change. But there was some regrouping that went on. Here, there were no parentheses. Over here, though, we actually grouped things together in parentheses. And since it's multiplication and it deals with regrouping, this is the associative property of multiplication. Now again, here you want to look at the order. On the left side it goes 2, 3, 4. On the right side it goes 4, 2, 3. Since the order changed, you need to be thinking of the commutative property. Well, 2 plus 3 on the left side and 2 plus 3 on the right side. So that's not what makes it the commutative property. What makes this one the commutative property of addition is the fact that on the left side you have 2 plus 3 plus 4, but on the right side the 4 jumped out front and now it's 4 plus 2 plus 3. Commutative property of addition. So on the back here, we're going to fill in, you're going to have something like this in your practice tomorrow. Fill in the blanks of this proof showing that w plus 5 is times w plus 2 is equivalent to w squared plus 7w plus 10. So here's all the steps that we're going to name the properties for, but I took the time to spread them out so that we have more room at the bottom here. If you take a look at what's happening up here, you'll see that it's the distributive property that's going to be used to create this final product. W times W is W squared. W times 5 is 5W. 2 times W is 2W, and 5W plus 2W is 7W. And 2 times 5 is 10. Now in the next one, let's take a look at what happened from this one here. Here we had W plus 5 in parentheses and then times W at the end. And here you have W in the front times W plus 5. Do you see that the W was in the back and now it's in the front? And you're multiplying, so commutative property of multiplication. Now this stayed exactly the same, so no property was performed. All right, now we're going to take a look from here to here. It looks like they stayed the same. W's in the front, and then you have W plus 5. But here, times 2 is in the end, and here times 2 is in the front. So again, the order switched. It's commutative property of multiplication. Now, if you look from here to here, it looks a little different. This side looks the same, but here it looks like they distributed. W times W gives you W squared, and W times 5 gives you W times 5. So we use the distributive property in that step. Now, if you go from here to here, it looks like this side stayed exactly the same. But up here we had W times 5, and down here we have 5 times W. The order of the W and the 5 changed around a multiplication symbol. So again, commutative property of multiplication. Now going from here to here, we still have W squared plus 5W. That stayed the same. However, 2 times parenthesis W plus 5 became 2W plus 10. It looks like the person distributed the 2 through the parentheses. 2 times W is 2W. 2 times 5 is 10. The distributive property. Now, if you have no parentheses, and then on the other side you have parentheses, you could pretty much assume it's the associative property. Okay, because here you would work from left to right. But here, parentheses tell us to do 5W plus 2W first. So we regrouped, and that changed the order in which we do the operations. So this is the associative property of addition. Okay, now this last one simply just combined these terms. 5W plus 2W became 7W in the middle. So is that really a property being used? Maybe you could say the associative property of addition because it's no longer 5W plus 2W. You combined them. But if you were to just write combine like terms here, I would be okay with that too. But in terms of properties, it is the associative property of addition. All right, so really tonight just, please look over these notes. Quiz yourself, maybe make some flashcards. If you can just remember that the commutative property has to do with order, and the associative property has to do with regrouping, and the distributive property has to do with multiplying a number through the parentheses and multiplying by both terms, you'll be in great shape. So I will see you in class tomorrow, and have a wonderful evening.